I don't know why I have always been the type to avoid media when it is at its peak. Not for a specific pretentious reason, but I either get lucky and watch it early on, or I wait till the wave of its popularity lowers. And that's why I'm doing this video till now, months, even years later, after its online discourse. I think it was impossible to miss all of the content that was being produced thanks to the discussions that were happening about Poor Things. So when I watched the movie, I inevitably did it with everything everyone had been saying. So let's get into it. Poor Things tells the story of Bella Baxter, a grown woman who gets her brain replaced with the brain of a baby as an experiment conducted by the surgeon Godwin Baxter. From this point on, we follow Bella's journey into maturity. If you ask me for my personal opinion, I like the movie a lot. If we talk about technicalities, I love its production. The sets and look for the film always keep you in this surrealist world. Even when Bella leaves the safety of her home, which obviously everything is much more surrealist than the outside, it still keeps you in this eccentric space all of the time. And if you put a little more of attention, you will realize how even the music and the clothing accompanies Bella's development. At the start, everything feels disheveled, like there's an idea of cohesion, but you're not quite there yet. And as the movie progresses, you can see Bella using the same clothing over and over again, but how she stylized that clothing is different. You can see how she is maturing. At first, it's truly like you are letting a toddler choose their outfit. And then you watch said toddler become a teenager who makes better decisions. And then the notes from the music become more well put together. Like at the start of the movie, you hear the music and it is like you are playing a piano that has some keys missing. You know, when you play a key and it sounds dull because it doesn't work? It felt like that, but by the end of the movie, the music became complete. Like it was finally harmonizing. And that is because Yorgos Lanthimos. Something that I love about his movies is that he is someone who truly utilizes every element of a movie to tell the story. One exists to support the other. Everything on screen tells a story. Everything you see, everything you hear. It's not there to just embellish the style. It is there for a reason. Now, when it comes to the story, I also think it is a great story. Using the elements of Bella having a baby's brain allows you the opportunity to see how we as people become conscious of the world we live in. While Bella isn't allowed to leave the house and she's kept protected, it is very whimsical. You see different animals put together thanks to Godwin, who does whatever he wants inside his lab, and he's always surrounded by people who think alike him and do as he orders. But once Bella is outside and starts discovering different people, different philosophies and experiences, this including a tiny peek at the worst the world has to offer, she changes. Her view of the world expands as her brain grows. Something that I love about our humanity is that we cannot grow if we do not mix with others. We need other people in order to grow and know ourselves better. I love the idea of connection and disconnection as we move on through life. And I think this story shows that. Bella gets to know many different types of people and she experiences the world in different forms, from the physical to the philosophical until she finds her own purpose. Because let's put the journey of Bella into perspective. Bella was created out of the curiosity of a man, with Godwin. Her past self was under the control of another man, with her husband. And for a while, she served to many men. And at the end of the story, she goes back to her roots and becomes who she decides to be. Now, all of this sounds so cute and dandy, but I am not going to ignore the elephant in the room, and that is that this movie was met with a huge online discourse about its thematic. So let's talk about that. And I will start this part with a quote by Lanthimos and I'll expand from there. When asked about this movie, Yorgos Lanthimos said, "If you take a film that literally, where you start discussing it in terms of the brain of a child, then you are kind of missing the point of storytelling in general. If you start to analyze the film as something that would actually happen, then of course the film doesn't work." And I wanted to bring this quote to start the conversation because I feel that certain pieces of media aren't meant to be taken that literally. While I 100% understand that every piece of media automatically becomes a subject for the public to be diagnosed through different lenses, I do think that the intention and meaning behind the piece is equally relevant. And sometimes I feel like people do not watch movies ready to be taken into the universe the movie is presented itself in, but they want to apply their recognition of our own real world into it. They do not comprehend the world they're looking at. They are not curious and wanting to understand the world that they are watching, but they want the logic of the movie to be in tune with their view of what's the right experience in our real world. A world like the one Bella Baxter lives in and she exists in is not real. We do not live in a world where you can just change people's brain. It is a movie, and you need to let the movie take you through the journey and the rules of this new world you are exploring. So when Lanthimos said, if you start to analyze the film as something that would actually happen, then of course the film doesn't work. It struck me because for sure, from the start you understand this is an incredible peculiar world. The story is taking place in a world that is not my world, is not the real world. It's a different universe. Sometimes you need to leave your logic to the side and let the movie present you with its own logic, and you can watch the movie understanding that logic. To me, the brain in Bella's head is not so much of a child, but it is an undeveloped brain. It is like it is stuck in a stage where the instinct and physiological needs come first. Morals and manners are non-existent. While I was watching the movie, I felt like I was watching the three agents of psychic apparatus according to Freud. At the start of the movie, Bella is an id or ID. The ID is the impulsive part of your personality that is driven by pleasure and repulsed by pain. It contains the impulses and desires. And now, leaving all these psychological thing behind and going back into the movie a little bit more, if the sex in this movie amounted to nothing, I would agree. I am someone who advocates against unnecessary sex on screen, but sex is a key part of Bella's development. We claim to be a more open society, but the moment a woman is the center of an imperative sexual story, then it is wrong. The way Bella has a fascination for sex is part of her current undeveloped personality. She moves through impulses. She discovers it feels good to touch herself down there, and then she discovers sex through Duncan. We can agree he likes her because she's easy to manipulate and she's a wild thing, something different. And as their days together go by and Bella is able to meet new people and see both the beauty and horrors of the world, her mind develops. Her brain doesn't mature with time, but it develops the more she sees the world. For me, this was a journey more about developing your sense of the world and yourself than anything else. With Bella, the moment her mind expands and she develops more sense of the world, she has less sex with Duncan and she wants to read more and meet other people. This leads to Duncan getting tired of her. Bella now is too independent, too knowledgeable, and won't do as he says anymore. If we talk about misogyny, for me this is the opposite. Bella was a naive woman who fell into the ill hands of a man, but she managed to grow, mature, and live. She stopped giving in. And here, I would say she reached the ego. Quoting Simple Psychology, ego is the rational part of the psyche that mediates between the instinctual desires of the ID and the moral constraints of the superego, operating primarily at the conscious level. And well, the sex do not end when Duncan leaves the movie. Eventually, Bella finds herself working at a brothel. And the brothel, for me, in my opinion, is a very important part for Bella. There is where she grows the most. In the brothel is where she sees the complications of sex and women. Till that point, for Bella, sex was easy and pleasurable. But there, she understands that it has an ugly side too. Thanks to everything that Bella learns there, she wants to learn more about herself. And so, she returns to the house of who was her husband initially before she lost her brain. She goes back to the past to understand where she came from and how she ended up where she did. And at the end of her journey, you know what happens? She takes care of her husband and goes back to Godwin's house to become a surgeon herself. In this last part, Bella unlocks the superego, the ethical component of the personality, and provides the moral standards. Bella reaches a higher state. A state where she knows who she wants to be and lives according to those moral standards she created through her journey. She has become in some way her perfect self. The way I watched the movie, for me, it was a philosophical conversation. The setup of the body with a young brain was the medium in which the story was told. There are stories that you cannot take literally, and just because a story presents immoral acts, it doesn't mean they are advocating for them or teaching to audiences. Again, if what we saw was meaningless, sure, it was male gaze and for pleasure. But just because Bella is a sexual person doesn't make it bad. Saying something like that just implies that when a woman is sexual, it's because she wants to please the male gaze. It just pushes this idea that women are not sexual beings, and I hate it. That's a stigma that I detest. Women can have sexual stories for their own pleasure. If the criticism is that you have the brain of a baby on a grown woman, well, Duncan likes Bella because she's a grown woman who is very naive. Duncan wasn't like, I like this child. And even with Duncan there, he disappears from the story right at the middle. He is not the happy ending. He is not a man Bella attaches herself to. She loses interest in him quite quickly. She is okay with him leaving because he was annoying anyway. Duncan was just the catalyst of Bella's story. Bella needed a way and reason to leave the Godwin mansion, and it was Duncan. When he loses his purpose in the story, he disappears. He is discarded as the man-child he is. There was never anything condoning or supporting Duncan. In conclusion, in my case and opinion, Poor Things is a very well-told story about the journey of a peculiar woman in a peculiar world. It is different, the look is gorgeous, and I love how they use every element in filmmaking to advance the story. But certainly, it is not a movie for everyone, and that's okay.